by adding some locations, and started looking at a second one, kind of starting it from scratch, and had actually gone out to the bank and secured some financing to buy some equipment to get that second thing kind of going. As we just got started with it, that's where he was. He had bought his first location a few years ago, a place where he was working. He bought out the prior owner, and he was looking to be able to kind of grow. And he was in negotiations with the mayor of this town he was going into, and as he's telling stories about the mayor, I was having flashbacks to a movie from the 1980s, a movie called Dr. Detroit with Dan Aykroyd. Crazy movie. He's describing what this guy was wearing, what he was doing. I had visuals of that guy in my head. So, in any case, didn't work out so well. This guy wanted to be basically paid off and have things going on and get people working, and just all the stuff you hear about that's absolutely crazy. And he couldn't believe it. He'd heard different stories, but he said, I couldn't believe that this guy was actually asking for this kind of stuff.
It would make a movie. I agree. You know? Yeah.
So instead of going that route and really trying to open a location from scratch, he started to look and started getting some phone calls too in terms of potentially looking to go buy a second location. And that wound up being a much better approach. And I want to tie into something we were discussing earlier today in terms of the need for, the idea of spending money to make money. All right, so a big part of what was going on here is he helped to find other people's money to be able to invest. Because again, just because you don't need to spend your own money often to do stuff. So whether it be in terms, like I mentioned before here, he went and bought some equipment using bank financing. And banks are usually, depending on which bank you talk to, they're okay with lending money for hard assets and hard equipment, because that's stuff they can go out there and grab back if things don't go well.
Yeah, what you're saying, there are a lot of versions of spending money or not spending money.
Right.
That's right.
But
it doesn't have to be your own money.
That's right. And the way it usually comes across is, hey, I need to have a big pile of cash sitting back here that I can go tap into. So from the equipment standpoint, from his first acquisition, buying out the guy he used to work for, he did that in a way where he paid the guy off over time. So the seller took back financing. So this is often the case where the prior owner will take money back, and it's a steady stream of payment. So again, it's not coming in and dropping a big pile of cash on somebody. He was able to do it and use the owner's money and the money coming from the company profitability as he grew it to be able to fund and pay off that guy.
That is so common, and I think many small business owners are perplexed by that. They have to hear it a few times, and when they do, the light goes on. Because, getting money, even understanding money, can be very complicated.
Right. And so this second acquisition that he found was a great opportunity for him. It was in an area where the current business was the only competitor around. The current owner wanted out. Just gone through a messy divorce, was mad at the world, just wanted to not only get out of the business, but get out of town. He was spending a bunch of his time away from the company, and he had kind of capped it off, to keep it at a certain size. He did not want to grow it, and create all kinds of different frustrations for his team.
So often that is the case. You hear about it casually. A lot of people do. A motivated seller. This guy was a motivated seller.
Absolutely.
He wanted out. That's what that means.
He wanted out, and our client could see the tremendous underutilization of this facility in this area, to the point where he said, look, I can double this thing in a year or less, based on what's kind of there. He had the equipment already purchased for the other location that would fit very nicely into this thing, get things up and going and start to kind of grow. So within a course of about 3 or 4 months, he was able to negotiate a deal where a couple things happened. He was able to borrow some money because he bought the business as well as the building, so he was able to borrow some money from the bank to help fund some of that. The owner plugged the gap for a lot of this in terms of what he was willing to take back in terms of seller financing.
Let me just interject. The owner actually served as the bank, and that's how you should look at it.
Right.
Because that's what's happening. Rather than give him money, or give him cash, he's taking back a note from the.
And many owners will do it because at the end of the day, many of them are used to taking compensation out of the company, month to month, and this is a way that they can continue to do that. Money keeps coming in month after month. And then the third thing he went and used some vendor financing. Now his industry is very unique in terms of his vendors will offer something called a prebate.
Very unusual. Well, at least from our perspective.
So I guess many of you who are out there listening maybe have never used or heard of prebates. The concept here is that a vendor was willing to, with our client signing a 5-year contract in order to buy supplies from this vendor, was going to, instead of rebating him money, usually what they do is they'd rebate a percentage, maybe 20 or 25% of the cash back of what they bought. Instead of rebating it, where they give it back to them after they've spent it or give them discounts as they're buying it, they'd literally write a check, a pre-bate, pre with the P at the beginning of it, a pre-bate, signing a check for that 5 years up front.
How cool is
say,
that?
here you go.
What
Right?
a cool, what a cool instrument. So you get 6 figures income here, and it's all coming on the IFCO.
Right. But with full faith and confidence, and the way he signed that deal was based on what the current business was doing. If you looked at the 5-year projection, that they would do that amount of business for the next 5 years. And our client knew, as I mentioned, he could double this thing in a year. So he took bank financing, seller financing, and vendor financing.
Perfect.
He was
Beautiful
able to,
story.
Yeah, and was able to be able to buy this thing, and lo and behold, had things going, and he was at a pace of more than double within 12 months on this company. More than double. And it was the point where he grew at that within the next 12 months, he also bought his third company, doing the same.
What happens, when you act on knowledge like that, you gain confidence.
That's right.
And with that confidence, you start to see more opportunities, and more things happen in your business because you're able to act on those opportunities. The discussions with him now are altogether different because he sees a whole different world.
Right.
And if you're a successful operator in your business, those kinds of things should be forthcoming. I mean, they just should, with no problems.
So